Hi and welcome to my channel. I'm Simon and today I am back to tell you about some summer reads that I think you would love. I was going to do this earlier in the summer, but because I've been filming in bulk so that I can kind of do it a month's worth at a time because I'm traveling so much with work, I didn't get around to doing it, but lots of you have asked for it since, so I thought, you know what, I'll do it. I know we might not have much of summer left, partly because in my brain autumn starts as soon as it physically can. If there's a slightly dull sky in the summer, it's autumn to me. But before we head to my favourite season that technically should run 6 months of the year, let's go through some summary books that I have read that I think you may love. And if you want to leave me some summary recommendations in the comments below, do so after you've heard what's here, basically, because otherwise you might mention one and I'll have already mentioned it here, but then we'd be aligned, which would be a beautiful thing. I've gone on a massive tangent. First up, I have 3 books that all take place at the same time, except well, not literally the same time, but they all take place in the same summer, and that's the summer of 1976, where there was a huge heat wave, very much really like we've just had recently, only it was much hotter, so maybe this will inspire authors in the future to come. Not that there's been any other big world events happening, of course. Yeah, these will take place in the summer of 76. First up we have Maggie, who I'm sure all of you are very excited for the summer read that is going to be The Marriage Portrait, which is brilliant and is out later this month in the UK at least. This is all about a family. It's the summer of 1976, it's July, and one day the head of the household, the patriarch of the household, goes out to, I've forgotten his name now, Robert, goes out to buy a paper, leaving his wife Greta behind and her kids, and he just doesn't come back, and we follow on from there. Is it that something awful's happened to him? Has he deserted his family? You'll have to read on to find out, but I thought it was brilliant. You know, I love Maggie anyway, you all know this. Then we have, and this is the American edition, The Trouble with Goats and Sheep by Joanna, one of my favourite authors. I can say that I was thinking about then, like, have I read 3 of her books? Because that's the rule, but yes I have, although I still haven't got around to A Tidy Ending, which I think will be one of my summer reads. Certainly if not, I'm definitely going to read it by the autumn. I've got to read it by the paperback because hopefully we're going to be doing an event together. Anyway, back to this one. This, like Instructions for a Heatwave, is set in the summer of 1976, and we follow Grace and Tilly as they go on an adventure to find out what has happened to Mrs. Creasy, who lives on the same cul-de-sac as them, and they start to go through all of the different doors into all of the houses of their neighbours, finding out more about them. And what's brilliant about that is that they overhear lots of gossip, and we as adult readers get all the different kind of intonations and things that are going on that they don't spot. But also often Grace and Tilly will reach the complete wrong conclusion about what they've just overheard. It's also very much a book about outsiders, and Joanna has said that her, well, in this case this novel, but I think this applies to a lot of her work, is all about celebrating the people who never made it onto the dance floor. They were always around the dance floor, but would have loved to join in if they've been invited, and that always gets me every time. So yeah, this is fabulous. I have been weighing on about it for several years, as I have a book that if you have not read yet, I don't know if we can still be friends, frankly, because I insist that everyone has to read this book. I think it is phenomenal. It's Catherine Hall's The Proof of Love, again set in the summer of 1976. This is set in the Lake District, and we meet a young man who is who's come from Cambridge and is kind of escaping Cambridge. He's a mathematician, and he ends up living on this farm where he befriends a young girl called Alice, and he has reasons for fleeing where he went. He's kind of becomes the centre of attention because it's all about like incomers, and some people like new people coming to the area, some people really don't and are trying to like work him out in all sorts of different ways, and we follow on from there. And I just fell in love with this book. It is so haunting, and it's odd to say that with a book that's so summery, and actually it links to the next one because I feel similar about that and the emotions that it brings up. But there's something very hazy but slightly gothic within that haze that I think Catherine does amazingly. I should say Catherine has become a friend of mine. We got to know each other through this book. When I first got it, it was described as Sarah Waters meets Daphne du Maurier, and I was like, really? Let's see. And I don't think it was fair to give that comparison because it's its own book in its whole way, but Daphne du Maurier, I feel, would love this book. So there we go, we've got that one. Then onto a short book that is actually my grand's edition, and I remember reading it one summer at hers when I'd run out of books to read. I mean, imagine, thankfully my gran was a huge book addict and had plenty, a huge bibliophile, and it was A Month in the Country, and I reread this by J.L. Carr for a podcast that I used to do with my friends Gavin, Kate and Rob, called Here Read This, and we all loved this book, and we all like very different types of literature, but this tells of one summer looked back on with like a nostalgic eye of Tom Birkin, who, having been part of the war, ends up helping out at this church in this small countryside village, and we follow what happens, and it's very small moments, but they're beautiful, that really celebrate life, look at trauma, look at grief, look at longing. And again, like I was saying with Catherine's book, there's this sort of haze over it, which is slightly, like I said, nostalgic, but also there's like melancholic, I guess, more so. Catherine's essay has gothic elements in it, but this is much more melancholic, but absolutely beautiful and haunting, which you don't often say about books that are set over hazy summer days, but is very much the case. For some escapism, I have the wonderful Mermaid of Black Conch by Monique Roffey. This was the overall Costa winner when I was one of the judges. I fell in love with it. This is all about a man who is set in the 1970s. Is it 76? It is. It's April 76. How spooky. I hadn't even twigged that. That's really, really weird. We're out with a fisherman, and he's playing his guitar, and this brings a mermaid to the surface who has not, she was cursed and was sent to the bottom of the ocean because she was so beautiful, people thought she would steal all of their husbands. She comes to hear his music, and then she is caught by some Americans, and he saves her, and we follow a love story of sorts from there. And what I loved about this is no Disney mermaid. This is a mermaid who, when she transforms, it is gritty and dirty and messy and smelly, and it's just brilliant. But also we get to know the other inhabitants of the island, their backstories, their loves, their losses, their grudges, and then there's a brilliant villain in here, but also just so many different layers and themes, and all the while it being this sort of escapist love story, magical love story set on a hot island, which makes me think of summer, and indeed is very much the part of this book which I loved and actually read on a hot tropical island, although be it in the spring, not in the summer. It's You Made a Fool of Death with Your Beauty by Akwaeke Emezi, which is a fabulous romping romance. And this is not an author who's decided like, oh, I'm going to write romance fiction and make it really literary. I mean, it is beautifully, beautifully written, and they do a fantastic job, but this is an author reveling in the romance genre and going wild with it. And we follow a woman whose husband has died, and she meets this man at the beginning of the book. They cross eyes on a hot balcony in New York, and things happen, but then she meets someone else and ends up going onto an island, and maybe more things happen. And it looks at bisexuality brilliantly. There is a character in here called Joy, who literally is joyous and brings joy to every page they're on, so it's about friendship as well. But I loved the bisexuality representation here, as well as it being all about art and culture, and just having this brilliant backdrop for the most part of, well, either hot New York City, which I love, or a hot desert island, which I'm or tropical island, sorry, which I'm learning to love and would like to go back to one very, very soon. So yeah, can't recommend this enough. Well, I recommend them all, obviously. Then we have Benjamin Meyer's The Offing, which I absolutely love. This is set in the summer after the Second World War, and we meet a young man who has been at war and is now heading to the coast instead of going home to his northern village, because he wants to see a different part of, I guess, his home, well, a different part of the north of England. And when he does, he ends up meeting a woman called Dulcie, who ends up living in, well, he becomes a tenant, and their friendship blossoms from there. I've really, really sold that badly, but this book is one that, it's one where I remember the plot, but it isn't massively plotty, but it is at the same time. But it's more a feeling, and this book is just like love and the joy of friendship and connection with people of all different ages, from all different walks of life. And the sequence we and the secrets we keep from people, and also what we choose to reveal about ourselves, and how friendship can come in the most unlikely of places. And it's just wonderful. You will never ever forget Dulcie. She's one of my favourite characters of all time. Benjamin Myers is an author I will be heading to this summer because he has a new novel which is all about crop circles, I think in the 1980s, and also about men. I think it's called The Perfect Golden Circle, or The Perfect Gold Circle. I need to see if I can see it at the corner of my eye. At the corner of my Mariah Carey, that sounded like I was going to say at the corner of my eyes. I really recommend this and love Benjamin's writing, full stop. A book that I read fairly recently, actually, like Akwaeke Emezi's, is Just by Looking at Him by Ryan O'Connell, which I think has the most summery cover ever, even though it isn't really set by the sea or anything. But this is all about a man who's living in LA, and he seems to have the perfect life. He's working in Hollywood, and he has the perfect boyfriend who even has the perfect penis. However, there is no such thing as perfect, and even the most perfect seeming of things can become possibly boring, and we follow as there is an unravelling, and we get to meet a sex worker called River, who I thought was brilliantly written. And this book is steamy and sexy, but it's really thought-provoking because it looks at disability and visibility within the queer community, as well as looking at how prejudices and perceptions are things that can harm all of us, but we are all guilty of doing. So it's got lots of layers to it too, but it's brilliantly written, incredibly funny, very sexy, and yet, like I said, at the same time, has real grit to it, so recommend that. Another book that has real grit to it and reads like a thriller, even though it's about a marriage, is Stay With Me by Ayobami Adebayo, which I try and talk about again at any opportunity that I can. This is set in Nigeria, even though Nigeria is kind of the backdrop, although some of the folklore and myths and different parts of culture come to the fore. But it's really about a couple who are struggling to have children. A second wife is brought in, and we follow them as kind of we see how society reacts to both the parents, actually, because we flip between their voices, and sometimes you don't know which is which I think is really clever, and I think is done for a certain reason. But honestly, this book gripped me, and like, there are so many moments that you're not expecting that, like I said, it does feel massively like a thriller. And who doesn't love a good thriller at the, I was going to say at the pool, at the beach, at home in the garden, wherever you may be, at the library, trying to cool off. Can't recommend this enough. Then if you want to go on a holiday with a fabulous cast of characters through fiction, my final fiction recommendation, or fictional recommendation before I have a non-fiction for you, 11 Books Unusual. My favourite book of last year, and that is Still Life by Sarah Winman. You join the most brilliant cast of characters as they end up going to Italy and creating kind of a found family. I've talked about this a lot, so I don't feel like I need to go wang on about it anymore. But, oh no, that's not true. I don't feel I need to extrapolate on that. Is that the right term? Have I used the right word? Have I tried to be too clever? I need to go into more detail on that because I've talked about it so much. But I will never stop wanging on about this book, like I won't several of these on this list, because they are all favourites. But yeah, this was my favourite of last year. I love the story of found family. I love the characters that you will just never forget. I love looking at Italy through some really unusual historical times, as well as some well-known. Like, there was something in here to do with Florence and the floods that I had no idea about, and that was really fascinating. But it's a real joyful escapist novel that kind of is epic in the fact that every character has a backstory and something. So even a character that only appears for like a little bit, you'll get their whole essence and their whole story, and it's just great. The perfect escapist, fabulously written treat that you could wish for any time of the year, but it will feel like you are going on holiday with these characters from the comfort of your own sofa, which is always a treat. And then last but not least, some non-fiction in the form of On the Red Hill by Mike Parker. And this is all about two different couples, Mike and his partner Preds, who inherited Riogoch, which is a farmhouse and was a B&B in Wales, which I've been to and done vlogs from, and I'll link that down below because it is one of my favourite places on the planet, and they're two of my favourite people on the planet. And Floss the dog, their dog, is one of my favourite dogs on the planet. I may get one of her puppies in the next letter, we'll see. Anyway, this when I read it, it made me feel all the seasons, but because it's written over different seasons, but summer really links to it, probably because actually it wasn't me that read it in the summer that we went there, but it was Chris, and him reading it kind of made me feel like I was rereading it through him, but also being surrounded by the sun and just being there with the spirit of sorry, I didn't say it, this place that Mike and Preds inherited from Reggie and George, who owned it and were the first gay couple to get married in Wales. Mike and Preds were there, and they had this brilliant friendship, which is also part of the book, but also the legacy of their relationship and the beginnings of it, and how they managed to have this quite openly gay relationship when history wasn't so open to queer people. And it's just a joy. It celebrates nature, it celebrates the best of human nature, or actually no, sometimes there's not such great human nature going on in here. There are characters, I will say, but yeah, I just absolutely devoured this and loved it, and it has a very, very special place in my heart. And whenever I think of the Red Hill, even though I've been there when it has been drizzly, I think of it in the sunshine and just the warmth of the place, sunny or not. And yeah, I'll also link the website, I'll link it on Airbnb down below as well, so that if you want to book yourself there, you can. I'm actually going to its sister Airbnb in the autumn with my mum and my stepdad and my sister for my mum's birthday weekend. So yeah, I'm really, really looking forward to that. And maybe I'll do some autumnal recommendations from there, because I'll have the car, so I'll be able to pile it with books. Anyway, moving on, those are some summary recommendations for you. I hope you enjoyed that selection. Let me know if you've read some of them already. I'm hoping you have some, because if you haven't, as I said, there could be a problem in our friendship going on. But yeah, I'd love to hear your thoughts and any recommendations for summary reads that you have for me. I will see you in another video very, very soon. Bye.